protection. Let me see it for us. Today we're going to start Chaf Amid Beis, towards the bottom, 4 lines from the bottom. The Takala Atzma Tanayi. We were discussing if you have 2 places where you have wine or oil. You have an upper vat and a lower vat. And the lower one has chul and that's tamei, and the upper one has truma. And if the truma, which needs to be kept pure, falls into the lower one, then you can't eat anything. So it's going to be a total loss. So we said that there was going to be a difference between the way you save it, if it's oil or if it's wine. We said there was a concern that oil you were going to leave there for longer. And actually wine, there was an issue. If it's new wine, you can't let it get old. That was our concern, because wine oil you can burn, and the wine you can use for perfume. But perfume, you're going to leave it, you're going to let it hang around. So we said that there was a chashash that to let it stay, to let it hang around. There's a chashash takala. People were going to end up eating it. So the Gemara now says, with takala atzma tanayi, this concept of a takala, that it could be a stumbling block. That means people might end up eating the wine, drinking the wine if you let it hang around. That's a much like this. The Tanya was taught in a brayso, chavashal yayin shel truma shenitmes. Let's say you have a barrel of wine of truma that became tummy. Bishama yayinim tishape chevel. The word chevel is an interesting word. Bishama says you pour it out all together. Chevel could mean like, Rashi tells us, chavila. Chaval, it's a waste. Thank you. On the side, I have the aruch that says hevel. Somehow that means immediately. Okay, whatever the case is, according to Beis Shammai, you can't let it hang around. You have to throw it out right away. Beis Hillel says no. You can use it for perfume. So this that we said that you can't let it hang around, the wine hang around. That's actually a machlokes. Beis Shammai says you can't, but Beis Hillel says you can. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi ani achriya. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi says, I'm going to come in and decide, because besada tishape chevel, b'bayis tasazil. It depends. In the field where they don't normally use perfumes, so then you have to spill it out right away. But in the house where they use perfumes, and they're going to spray this, sprinkle this wine as a perfume, then it will be acceptable. Those that say b'chadash tishape chevel, b'yashin tasazil. Some say it a little different. We said that new wine doesn't give off the same smell as older wine. So therefore, you're going to have to age it. So we said aging it we don't want you to do, so we want you to spill it out right away, tisha b'chevel. But however, if it's old wine, that you can use as perfume. And Amrulai, and they told Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yosi, ein achras shlishim achras, that your way of deciding is not going to be a decision. And there's 2 interpretations here, basically 2 interpretations. Rashi's interpretation is that usually we accept the third view because you have 2 views, and the third one has a combination of both, like in the Venn diagram. It covers both. So what we'd do is you would say, the Venn diagram is when you have two circles, right? And this is when you have 3 circles. Okay, 3 circles, and they overlap. And so that middle one, the middle one overlaps with this side and overlaps with that side. So therefore, he's considered a majority to this side because he has both opinions for this one, and he has both opinions for that one because he joins in and he takes a side. And so what is he doing? He's saying that really, Beis Shammai is correct in the field. Now I have 2 opinions. I have Beis Shammai and Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi against Beis Hillel, that you have to spill it out right away. Beis Hillel is correct in the house. I have 2 opinions, Beis Hillel and Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi against Beis Shammai. So really I should be able to have a yachad v'rabim. It's an individual versus a majority versus. So really I should say that. Rashi says here we don't say that. Why? Because Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai never mentioned house or field. You're just coming in with this new thing. If Beis Shammai would have said that in the house and in the field, and he comes along and says no, only in the field, so then we would have seen that he's taking part of Beis Shammai's view But Beis Shammai never mentioned any concept of those details. It's Rashi's pshat. Rabbeinu Hananel has an interesting pshat. Rabbeinu Hananel says, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, he's a son of Rabbi Yossi, right? His teacher was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's teacher was Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua's teacher is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. He's a third generation off the students of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. So what he's saying is, Ein achras lishim achras, third generation people can't mix in to this and make decisions. Yeah, that's Rabbeinu Hananel's pshat. Beautiful. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina is early Amira in Eretz Yisrael. It says, Machlokes shenachlu pachas mimeyas chulin tamein. We're on top of Kabbalah. 3 lines down. The machlokes is if it fell in. When do we say that we have this issue? Is if the wine or the oil fell in to less than 100 sa chulin tamein. Aval nafla meya chulin tamein. Ivrakol tered betitma vayitmen biyad. What's going to happen is the truma is going to become bottled. Truma becomes nullified 1 in 100. Usually with kosher food, it's nullified 1 in 60. When it comes to truma, it's nullified 1 in 100. Now, if it falls in to 1 in 100, so you have no concern of a loss of the chulin underneath. So therefore, we should not allow you to protect the truma from falling in by using tamei kalim to be able to salvage the chulin that's underneath, because if what falls down, it's not going to become aser anyway. The chulin isn't going to become aser anyway. The chulin doesn't become aser, so don't be matama the truma biyad. Let it, whatever happens, but don't mix in and go directly and make it tamei. Tanya nami it's also taught in the Brisa. Chavashnish bergasol yenim tachta mea chulin tmein. You have a barrel that breaks in the upper vat, and underneath it is chulin tmein, mundane food that's tamei. Mundane food that's tamei you can eat. The problem is the truma is about to fall in. Truma that's tamei you can't. The truma was tar originally, but it's when it goes in, it's going to be truma with tamei. So Meider Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Lezer admits to Rabbi Yeshua, there's going to be a problem with this because it should be Rabbi Yeshua admits to Rabbi Lezer. That if you can salvage in Tara a revius, if you can save the truma that's falling into the tmeya, that with a vessel that's pure, you should try to do that. And if not, let it go down, and don't use the tamei keli to catch it. Gemara now says, "Hi, Meider Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua, Meider Rabbi Yeshua Rabbi Lezer mibaylei." Now, originally, Rabbi Yeshua held that. What was Rabbi Yeshua's opinion? He says, "Yitamena biyad." Rabbi Yeshua held that you were allowed to salvage. So over here we're saying don't salvage. That's Rabbi Yeshua agreeing to Rabbi Lezer's opinion. It's not Rabbi Lezer agreeing to Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. Over here we're saying it's falling into 100 safulin, so don't try to save it. That was Rabbi Lezer's opinion. So it says Rabbi Lezer agrees to Rabbi Yeshua, don't try to save it. No, Rabbi Yeshua agrees to Rabbi Lezer, don't try to save it, because that was Rabbi Lezer's opinion. Rabbi says you're right. Switch it around. It's Rabbi Lezer agrees to Rabbi Yeshua. It's Rabbi Yeshua agrees to Rabbi Lezer. Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Yeshua Amar Li'olam Leitepach. Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Yeshua says no, don't turn around. Hachamay Eskim B'Keli Sheteichi Tavaga B'Tamei. Very interesting teretz. He's saying not the end of the brisa that says that if you have 100 saw, then we'll just let it fall in. The beginning of the brisa. The beginning of the brisa says that if you can salvage a little bit, then you should. That is Rabbi Lezer being made to Rabbi Yeshua. Why? Everyone holds that if you can salvage, you should. No. Over here we're talking about a keli that's a little bit tamei. The outside of the keli is tamei, the inside isn't. Rabbi Lezer is agreeing to Rabbi Yeshua that you could try to salvage it even though this keli is partially tamei. Rabbi Yeshua would be the one that says you can salvage it even if it's tamei. Rabbi Elazar agrees to Rabbi Yeshua here. It's not fully tamei. You can salvage. So what's the case? The inside of the keli is pure. The outside is tamei. We spoke about this with Tumah de Rabbanan. You can make a distinction between the inside of the keli and the outside of the keli. Maybe we could have thought that maybe the outside of the keli is going to end up touching the truma. So Kamash Malan, the Rebbe Lezer tells us that don't worry about it, you can salvage. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Is Rabbi Kanano's opinion apply just to this matter, or is it supposed to be general?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it was mine also. The general opinion, or this one also?
Get the Yitzhak trophy. It sounds like it's general. It sounds like he's giving us a rule that I can't mix later generations in to be machriya between earlier generations. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. When you get into the paskening, how is halacha determined from the Gemara? So a lot of those decisions based on this Rishon paskel like this, the Rambam goes like this, the Rosh goes like that, the Rif paskels like that. It's really based on their rules that they're accepting. Could be that this one holds of this rule of the Gainim of Rabbeinu Hanan, one of the Gainim. He holds that that you can't use this third generation to mix in, and really there's like a lot of these rules that are unspoken about in each sugya. You have to borrow them from other places to see how much they're enough. Okay, start a new parak. Any hour that you're all the time that you're allowed to eat chametz, that would mean that let's say you're allowed to eat chametz until the 6th hour, according to Reb Meir, right? Oichlin kol chametz, Reb Meir holds you're allowed to eat chametz until 11 o'clock, and you burn it. You're allowed to eat chametz till 10:59. You burn it at 11:00, right? So during all of that time, if you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to feed to the animals, to the birds, and you can sell it. You can sell chametz. You can sell it to a non-Jew, and you can have any other benefit from it. Over Zmanai, let's say the time passed, then Asr by Nasr, then you can't have any benefit from it. Don't light and don't use it as fuel in your oven after the time. The Gemara is going to ask, obviously, but we'll see. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, now, we throw in another topic here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein bir chametz el streifa. It's possibly another topic. Rabbi Yehuda says the only way to destroy chametz is through burning. And the Chachamim argue, Chachamim say you could crumble it, throw it into the sea, you throw it into the wind, and throw it into the sea, and that's also considered destroying chametz. Okay, yeah. Oh, I forget, we mentioned before once that everyone holds lachar zmanai something. Yeah, I forget what we said before. In Daf Yud Beis, we mentioned a chiluk in this. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Shalei b'shas biyurei, but b'shas biyurei hashbasasa b'chol davar." The opposite. He says that when it's at the time b'shas biyurei, you can destroy it anyway. Before the time you needed to do streifa. No. Whenever the Zman for burning chametz is. I don't know when the Zman is. Let's say the Zman is the 6th hour. Yeah.
You don't have to go burn.
So it could be that destruction is, I don't know. Right. So the 6th hour, let's just say the 6th hour. The 5th hour, the Zman of the Zman Beer is Shreifa. The 6th hour would be the Zman Beer, according to everyone holds the Zman Beer as the 6th hour, which is 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock it has to be burned. By 12 o'clock you just destroy it anyway. That's what we said before once. Lachar Zman, yeah.
Is it possible that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the Mishnah and they're not talking about Pesachim, but the Shazimano?
Right.
We understand he says that you can't, illustrate but the Mishnah says that you can't use it for birth, you can't use it for firewood. So if you didn't have a fire burner from something else,
Questions have to be under 5 minutes. Questions have to be under 5 minutes, please.
and then you throw in the comments, it's one thing. But if you ignite the comments and burn it, and the comments itself is acting as a firewood, then that goes against.
Time's up. Time's up for that question.
I'm finished. You never understood it.
The Gemara is going to discuss the association with Rabbi Yehuda and using the chametz in your oven. We're going to get to that. There is an association there. Yeah, it's a correct observation. We'll see. Okay, the Gemara starts off with Kol Shoshim Mutalechel Michael. Any hour, any time that you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to feed. We can infer from this. Kol Shosh She'ena Mutalechel. Any time that you're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to feed. Let's say our Mishnah doesn't go according to Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda say before? We had before, he says that you're allowed to eat chametz the whole 4th hour. The 5th hour, you let it hang in limbo. And then in the 6th hour, you burn it. According to him, you're allowed to eat only in the 4th hour. You're only allowed to eat from 9 to 10. And 10 to 11, you don't do anything. So from 10 to 11, am I allowed to feed it to my animals? I am allowed. Our Mishnah doesn't go according to Rabbi Yehuda. Dear Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, I'm not allowed to eat, but I'm still allowed to feed. Doesn't fit with our Mishnah. In other words, the Mishnah didn't say that, but we can infer from the Mishnah that it's the opposite of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan, it was taught in the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir says that you're allowed to eat the whole 5th hour. What's the 5th hour? That's from 10 to 11. And then at 11 a.m., you burn it. Rabbi Yehuda says from 9 to 10, you're allowed to eat. 10 to 11, Thailand, you let it hang in limbo. And then you burn it at 11 o'clock. Okay, so that's our question. It seems like our mission doesn't fit like Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, Elamai Rabbi Meir. What do you want to say? It's Rabbi Meir. Hi, kol shosha matalecha al-maichel, kol shosha eichel maichel mi-baile. The Gemara understands that when it says kol shosha mutalechol, it sounds like one person is allowed to eat. Maichel, someone else is allowed to feed. If it would have said that while you're eating, you could feed, it would have said kol shosha eichel maichel. While you're eating, or as long as you're eating, you could feed. Kol shosha mutalechol sounds like it's talking about some other story where there's a permissibility here, someone else is allowed to feed. Amar Rabba Bar Ula Masnisin Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Bar Ula says our Mishnah is actually the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel. The Tanan, it was taught in the Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel Omer Chulin Nechol and Kalarba Shuma Kol Chametz V'Safim Tchila Sheish V'Alchi Tamer. Goes like this. Rabbi Gamliel holds that you're allowed to eat Shuma Chulin. You're allowed to eat from 9 to 10, and then you have to stop at 10 o'clock, 9:59. Truma, I'm allowed to eat from 10 to 11, and I stop at 10:59. And then I burn everything that's at 11 a.m., at 11 o'clock. And this is what it means. As long as a kohen is allowed to eat truma, which means till 10:59, Yisrael Michael Chuma Behema L'chayla. As long as he's allowed to eat, the kohen, anyone else is allowed to be Michael to their animals. In other words, the permissibility of feeding animals goes as long as the Kayin can eat his truma. And that's called Shashamutter Lechel, as long as he's allowed to. The Gemara asks, you say you're allowed to feed animals. Why does it have to give me a behema and chaya? That's true. It's necessary. Ditana behema. If it would only say that you're allowed to feed to an animal, the meshayra chazilei, that if it leaves over, you'll still see it there. The animal doesn't. A regular animal doesn't run and hide its food in a hole under the ground. It leaves the food on the floor. So if you see it, so that's why you're allowed to feed the animal during that time. Because this is a guava. Unbelievable. Make a bracha on it. Just okay. So you're allowed to feed an animal because it's going to be stuck. It's going to be. The food is going to be left there. You'll recognize that you should destroy it. But if you leave food for other animals, wild animals, and undomesticated animals, they'll take it to their hiding place, and whatever weasels and whatever, they'll take it over there. You won't find it. So maybe you can't feed it to them. You can't leave it out to them. If it would say the other way, that you can feed it to a wild animal, undomesticated, there's a benefit. At least it'll get it out of your sight. You won't be over on Bal Yirah. Bal Yimatzi, yes, but Bal Yirah you won't be over. Remember, we made a difference. Bal Yimatzi is anywhere where it is. Bal Yirah is to actually. See, Rav Behemoth is in the Mashayar B'lei Maska Daite. The Koyel Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzi. But by an animal, maybe he's going to leave it over, and you won't actually recognize that he left it over, and even though it's right there exposed, and you won't, it won't enter your mind that you need to be mavakel it, and it'll be there exposed, and you'll be over on Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzi, and Malay, which say maybe you can't feed it to your animals. So tzrich, it's necessary. Each case here tells me a different sort of chiddush that you're allowed to feed to your animals during that time. Oifes. Lamali. Why does it need to say birds? Once it says animals and wild animals, so it says birds along with it. So you're right. It doesn't. There's no chiddush that we get from the birds. Yeah. You're saying because you're going to be mavatal anyway by this month.
I don't see it, know it, which everyone did. What kind of
So, Moshe, the Koyala, Taisus, the Koyala Bal Yirah, he says, if you weren't mavatalet, you'll be violating Bal Yirah. But if you are mavatalet, so you're right. But then he adds in, he says, really, it could have also said another issue, that maybe you're going to eat it. Remember the original thing? Why do you have to do this chametz? It's Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Tosfos said maybe you're going to eat it. Gluska yafa.
No, isn't that you eat it in the towel?
We were talking about.
Wasn't that during the
Yeah, no, we were talking about why do you have to destroy the chametz? Why do you have to search for the chametz and destroy it? You could just be mevatel it. So the problem is that maybe you won't be mevatel it well. That was one issue. Maybe you won't really sincerely be mevatel. Another issue is that maybe you'll find something that you like and you'll end up eating it if you don't destroy it. Okay. You follow, Eliezer, are you able to follow in the, you see how to use that? Oh, you see how to use the Gemara? Okay, good. We're on 21 on the bottom, 21a. You can sell it to a non-Jew during the time that you're allowed to eat, or actually during the time that the Kayin is allowed to eat. You can still make the sale. After that, you can't make a sale. You can't sell it. The Gemara says pshita. Of course, you're allowed to sell it to a non-Jew during the time that you're allowed to eat. Lapukim Yaitan, it's going according to that opinion. The Tanya that is taught in a brisa. You have to mamish destroy the chametz. It's not enough that you get it out of your possession. It has to be destroyed. So if you're selling your chametz to a non-Jew, you have to know that he's going to eat it before Pesach comes in. That's Pesachim, yeah, your chametz. Your chametz is you have an obligation to get rid of your chametz. Selling it doesn't get rid of it. Right.
The guy's not going to buy it if he has to actually eat it.
Right. Unless you're, and our type of sale wouldn't work according to Beisham. Beisham says no. If you're allowed to eat it, you're allowed to sell it. So that Mishnah would be a chiddush according to Beisham. Beisham would hold it, you can't sell. Rabbi Yehuda, or possibly Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, our Gemara says, you notice Rashi and Taisus don't have that. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, they just have. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Aimer Kutach v'chol mini Kutach has limka shleishim yom kedem Pesach. Kutach was a type of dip. I think it had whey in it, and it was milchik, and it had a lot of salt. It was used to eat with bread. It was, yeah. Yeah, it had sour. It had a sour milk in it. So there's two opinions here. What's going on? What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda holds that kutach and all types of kutach you're not allowed to sell 30 days before Pesach. So if I learn that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Beishamai, great. That's what Rashi learns. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Beishamai, and kutach takes a long time to eat because it's just a dip. So if you sell it to that, it's just like a dressing or a dip. You don't eat it in one meal. You eat it a little bit with your bread. The bread is so if you have to sell it 30 days before Pesach to be confident, to be sure that it's going to be totally destroyed, totally consumed when Pesach comes in. That's Rashi's pshat. Taisus learns a little different, very different. Taisus says that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira actually holds like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says you're allowed to sell to a guy before Pesach. What's the problem? Says the problem is that he's going to be eating it on Pesach, and the guy, which is no problem to eat it on Pesach. The problem is that everyone knows people's kutach. They say, oh, this is so and so's kutach. They're going to think that you sold it to him on Pesach. So there's a problem even according to Beis Hillel. That's how Taisus learned. Okay, now we say a mutter ba'ana. This is going to throw us into an interesting sugya, famous sugya of having benefit from things that are prohibited to eat. For example, a nevela, a treifa, a dam, chelav. It says all of those things, you're not allowed to eat them. What about benefit from them? So we start off like this. You're allowed to have benefit. Mutter ba'ana. You're allowed to have benefit during the time. Gemara says pshita. Of course, you're allowed to have benefit. It says you're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to sell it. Of course, you're allowed to have benefit. What type of benefit are you going to get? You're going to smear it on your skin. If I'm allowed to eat it, of course I can have other benefit. It says late tzricha. No, we're talking about a special case, a unique case. We're not talking about having benefit before the time of the Yisra. We're talking about having benefit after the time. After the time of the Yisra, are you allowed to have benefit? No, because you scorched it. What you did was you started burning it. And Kamash Malan is coming to teach us the Chiddush Kidarabba, like Rabba taught. It says Rabba, it's supposed to be Rabba. Oh, the Rif and the Rush have it, Rava, not like the Bach. The Bach switches it. Kidarabba, Damarava, Charcha Kedem Zmana Mutaba, Nafil Lacher Zmane. Rabba says that if you scorch it, the chametz, to the extent, Taisus adds in, to the extent that it wouldn't be eaten by a dog, so then you're allowed to leave it around even after the Zman and have hana from it. It's burnt chametz. Burnt chametz, this could be a whole new market. They have a whole new market here. Burnt chametz on Pesach. What can you do with it? You can use it for after the Zman, after it's burnt, after it's scorched. Once the time passes, then you can't have a nah. No, some take this out over here. No, pshita. Of course, it's Asr Banal. It's talking about that it's not talking about Avr's money. It's now the 7th hour. We're talking about that it's only the 6th hour. 6th hour was only rabbinic because it was a concern that you don't know exactly where the sun is in the sky, cloudy day, you mix up an hour. The Rav Gidl Amarav, that Rav Gidl Amarav says that it's Asr Bahana, even during that rabbinic hour, that rabbinic prohibited hour. Rav Gidl says in the name of Rav, in the name Amrav Gidl, Amrav Chia Bar Yosef, Amrav Yechanan, I'm sorry. Usually, actually, it is Rav Gidl Amarav, but here it's Amar. Here's the Amar Rav. Just 1 second. Zion. Yeah. Amrav Chia, Amrav Gidl, Amrav Chia Bar Yosef, Amar Rav. Interesting. Now it's here. It's in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. I'm not sure why we have that switch. It says like this. It gets quoted in several pages earlier in the name of someone else. So it says, if someone marries a woman, Erev Pesach, couldn't find a better day to make a wedding. So he marries her, and he uses wheat as the value, has to give something of value. So he gives chite kardenaisa, he gives this grain that got wet, but it's from Kurdistan or something, Kurdenaisa, wherever that's from. It's a hard wheat that probably didn't become chametz, but could be it became chametz. It says ein chayshen kedushin, even though it's only rabbinic. And biblically, he gave her something of value. Rabbinically, it doesn't have value, but biblically, so it's considered nothing because you can't have any benefit from this. It's considered like the marriage is off. There was no wedding that took place. Okay. The original Yom HaShoah was Erev Pesach. After the war, they wanted to make a day of remembrance. I think in the end they did it Chav Ches Nisan, I think. They made the Holocaust Remembrance Day. And the Frum community didn't buy into it because during Nisan we're not supposed to make any Hespedim or anything. But their day that they chose originally was the day of the Warsaw Uprising, which was Erev Pesach. So I think at one of the meetings when they're like deciding which day it should be, so there was one from person there. He said, "Yeah, Erev Pesach. No one's going to participate in any event, whatever you're going to do." Okay. So, you can't light an oven with chametz that you want to burn. Pshita, leitzricha, this is obvious, but no, it's only necessary. They take out this pshita over here. No, this is not the pshita that they take out. Maybe it is. What is the bach? Leitzricha ela Rabbi Yehuda. Ela Rabbi. Okay, no, he switches it to ela. Okay. You can't use it to burn your chametz. Well, okay, you can't have any benefit from it. So the Gemara says no. According to Rabbi Yehuda, maybe I could have thought that I could have that sort of benefit. Why? This is Dr. Stein. This is what you were mentioning. Because the Amar Ein Biur Chametz Ela Sreifa. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the only way to destroy chametz is through burning. Now Taisvus adds in over here a good point. His point is like this, that the rule is kol hanisrafin afran mutter, kol hanikbarin afran aser. There's certain things that need to be burnt, certain things that need to be buried. The rule is once I've done the mitzvah of burning whatever it is that needs to be burnt, chametz, so then once it's burnt, the ashes I can have benefit from. If the Torah tells me to destroy it by burying, so then over here, I could have thought what we're going to say is that since Rabbi Yehuda holds the mitzvah of destroying chametz is to burn it, that means once it's burned, I can have benefit from it. So I could have thought that while I'm burning it, I can have benefit also. While I'm burning it, I can use it to heat some pots or whatever. I mean, no one would put chametz into their Pesach oven, but let's say someone did. So it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, I have a chiddush that it's also. Since Rabbi Yehuda says that the mitzvah of destroying chametz is through burning, while it's burning, you should be able to have enough from it. Kamash Malon comes to tell us that you can't. Now, if I hold like the Chachamim hold that the way of getting rid of chametz is not through burning, through any means, which means that there is no leniency after it's burned to use the ashes. That's a problem. That's a problem.
That last thing is very problematic.
I'll tell you the pshat. It's not a contradiction. Over here, it's the time to burn it. It's the time to destroy it. It became usher because chametz is usher. And once you've destroyed it, even though it was usher, once you've destroyed it to the extent that it became ashes, it becomes mutter. Over there, we were talking about that it wasn't the time of Isser. It was still chametz. It was chametz and it was mutter. But I've done something to it that spoiled it to the extent that it's not edible. So then everyone would agree that after the time of Isser, there was never an Isser on it. Over here, there was an Isser on it once. And I've done the mitzvah of destroying it, the Isser goes off. Over there, it was never Isser because it was spoiled from being something edible, even to a dog. So then it never became Isser.
We also have concept that basically like know something's going to happen and something happens. For example, the animal
Right.
So if it's in the fire and it's burning, you know it's going to be burnt, it's done.
So you want to consider it that it's burnt already while it's burning.
We have that concept.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but we're going to do it out of what point it's like the match.
Right here. Okay. Amar Chizkiah. Chizkiah says there's going to be a discussion here. Chizkiah and Rabbi Bo, two Amiraim in Eretz Yisrael, to discuss sources for things that are prohibited to eat. They're prohibited to have benefit from. Amar Chizkiah minayin lechametz Pesach shasher ba'anah. Chizkiah says, how do we know that he can't have benefit from chametz on Pesach? Shenamar, because it says in the pasuk, lo yeyachal chametz. You shall not eat, or rather, it shall not be eaten. Lo yeh b'heter achila. There should be no way that you're going to get eating from this, which means that if I'd be allowed to sell it and buy food, then I would be getting eating out of this, even though I'm not eating this, but I'm getting a heter achila from this. So therefore you can't have another. That's a source. Time of the kasav rachman Allah yachal chametz. The reason why I can't do this is because it says la yachal. How like siv la yachal, but if it didn't say la yachal, it would have just said la yachal, not yachal. It should not be eaten. It says don't eat. Havamina, yisra achila mashma, yisra no lay mashma. I would have said that it only means that you're not allowed to eat. La yachal tells me that you can't have any benefit that's going to bring to eating. But la yachal means just don't eat, but I can have benefit. Pliga de Rabavo, this argues on Rabavo. Dama Rabavo, because Rabavo says, anywhere where it says in the Torah, don't eat, you shall not eat, you shall not eat. Thou shall not eat, or you shall not eat. It means you shall not eat also always means you shall not have benefit. It's going to be a lot. We're going to have a lot of questions, right? Because what about nevela would be the first one. It says, oh, well, nevela is an exception. Nevela, it says you give to a ger, or you give to or you sell to a nachri. So you can have benefit. It says, oh, that's the Torah says clearly. What's going to be with treifa? It says you give it to, you throw it to the dog. Oh, it says that says clearly. What's going to be, each one we're going to have to explain why. But otherwise, I don't have to discuss anything. It says lo yechal chametz, lo yechal chametz. Even if it would have said lo yechal, it would have told me that you can't have benefit. Even though it means don't eat, but included in the eating is also, according to him, means benefit. According to Rabbi Vo. Lo yechal means don't eat. Lo yechal means it shall not be eaten. Now the Gemara understands from that no sort of eating should come from this. That means even if you sell it and with that money you would buy other food, that money would be usher. It means you can't sell it to buy food.
What would you where you are not allowed to teach someone else?
Michael or Sa'achilo.
You are only not allowed to teach
The yachal is the passive, I think, as opposed to the active. Feeding is called, that's called causative, right? So the Tanya was started in the Brisa. Lo yisaychlu kol nevela. You shall not eat any nevela. That means an animal that died without shchita, any carcass. Lagera shebesharecha titenena va'achala. To a stranger that's in your gates, you should give, and he will eat it. Now that's talking about not a convert that converted to being Jewish. It's talking about someone that is a ger toisha. We don't have that today, but there was in the time of, I guess, in the time of the Sanhedrin, the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that you can have a ger toisha. I don't think it has to do with Beis Hamikdash or anything. It has to do with accepting that they won't worship idols, but they didn't have to keep kosher. So they're allowed to they're allowed to be a resident in Israel. They accept on themselves not to worship idols, but they don't have to accept other laws. They can eat non-kosher. So what do you do with this non-kosher animal? You give it to them. You sell it to a stranger. Stranger is mamish, a non-Jew, someone that worships idols, or no, he never accepted anything. So what were the two options here? You give it to the stranger, to the ger toisha, or you sell it to a non-Jew. I only see that you give it to the ger, and you sell it to the non-Jew. How do you know that you're allowed to sell it to the stranger, to the ger toisha? Talmud Leimer. Look at how it reads the pasuk. The pasuk tells us, "Lager asher b'sharecha titnena." It's supposed to be b'achala. Oy machar, and then you put a comma there. You go back to the pasuk, you stop before the word lenachri. You give it to the stranger or sell it, and you leave out the object of who you were selling it to. Stop right there, and it says that you're allowed to sell it, give it or sell it to the stranger. Lenachri b'nesina minayin. We're going to do the same thing again, just start from a different place. How do you know that you give it to? You can give it to a non-Jew also. You don't have to sell it. You give it to be eaten, and he eats it, or you sell it to the non-Jew. You stop. You start after the word lager. So then it says both options to the second object. Okay. What comes out is echad ger v'echad nachri ben b'nesin de Reb Meir. Reb Meir holds you can do either one. You can give it or sell it to either a ger or to a non-Jew. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you don't have that option. You have to do exactly as the Torah prescribes. L'ger b'nesin al nachri mechira. The stranger to this, it means the ger toishav, the resident alien. I think that's what it's called. Resident alien. To him you give it, and to the nachri, to the non-Jew, you have to sell it. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason why Rabbi Yehuda is so strict about this? If you could read the pasuk the way Rabbi Meir is suggesting that you started anywhere and you ended anywhere, you leave out the first object of the sentence or the second object of the sentence. Why does it break it into two categories? Or sell it. Or sell it is telling me that that's going on the next person. Or you sell it to the non-Jew. According to Reb Meir, it doesn't have to say, or it doesn't have to make that divide so strong, or you sell it, because he's saying that it goes on both. Reb Yehuda says, no, it's the way that it's written, that's the way that you have to follow. Reb Meir, he says, actually, the oy is important, because oy tells me that my first priority is to give it to the ger taisha, to the resident alien. And if I can't do that, let's say there's no one here, so then I can sell it to the non-Jew. Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't need a pasuk to teach that to me. I know that from like what it says. Rabbi Yehuda said, I don't need a pasuk for that. This resident that's not Jewish, but he's accepted, he's a ger that's accepted on himself not to worship idols, we have an obligation to support him. If he becomes poor, we have an obligation to keep him, to sustain him. So therefore, of course you have to give it to him. Of course he comes first, before some other person from some other country that's not, can't live in Israel because he worships idols. But of course you give it to him first. Now the Gemara says, Bishlam el Reb Meir, Reb Avo said before that anywhere where it says you shall not eat, that means you shall not have benefit. So according to Reb Meir, it's going to fit because the Amar Echad Ger Echad Machri Bein B'Mechir Bein B'Nesina. You could give it. Reb Meir holds that you can give it or sell it, whether to a non-Jew or to a ger taisha. From the fact that it has to tell me that a nevela is mutter bahana. You see, you can do anything you want with this. You can sell it or give it. So, it sounds like that if the Torah didn't give me this option of what to do with a nevela, it would have been usher. The Torah is giving me leniencies, what I'm allowed to do with something that's forbidden to eat. It says you can do this or you can do that. And the pasuk is telling me how to leniencies of what I'm allowed to do with it. It's not just that I'm required to give it to him and sell it to him, but I'm actually allowed to give it and sell it or give it and sell it. It's telling me more options. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the pasuk is actually being machmer on me. You're not allowed to sell it to a ger taisha. You're not allowed to give it to the non-Jew. It's telling me chumras. How do I know that everything else is asur b'ana according to him? In other words, Rabbi Avo says that any time it says that you're not allowed to eat it, that means you're not allowed to have benefit. According to Rabbi Meir, it's clear, because Rabbi Meir is telling me that I'm allowed to have benefit from a nevela. A nevela is an exception. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says that it's actually adding prohibitions by nevela. What would that tell me? That any other place where it says I'm not allowed to eat it, I would be allowed to do whatever I want with it. According to Rabbi Avo, I'm not allowed to do it. According to Rabbi Avo, if it says you're not allowed to eat it, you can't do anything with it. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, the nevela is the specific one that has the added prohibitions of what I'm allowed to do with it, not the leniencies. According to Rabbi Meir, it's telling me leniencies. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's telling me stringencies. But Rabbi Avo says that I'm never allowed to. So Rabbi Avo doesn't fit with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that says that by nevela is the specific one that has the stringencies. So according to Rabbi Avo, where do I know? According to Rabbi Avo, according to Rabbi Yehuda, where would I get Rabbi Avo's din? Where would Rabbi Avo get his din that I'm allowed to have, that I'm not allowed to have benefit from things that it says I'm not allowed to eat? So the Gemara says, "Nafkalemi lakel tashlichan." It says by a treifa, not by a nevela. By a treifa, that's an animal that died in the field. It was torn, right? Died in the field. It says you throw it to a dog. Now, that's what you throw to a dog. But anything else that's prohibited to eat, you're not allowed to throw it to a dog. You're not allowed to benefit from. Sounds like you can't throw it even if it's not yours. Okay? Can't feed animals if it's asur ba'ana. The treifa is an exception. The treifa I'm allowed to. The Rashi points out that if not for the word oisai, then I would have understood that it's just giving priority to the dog to give hakaras hatayv. The dogs didn't bark, but oisai is actually teaching me that no, it's much more than that. That only this is prohibited to have benefit from, but other things not. Rab Meir, what does Rab Meir do with oisai? But Meir doesn't need to learn that only this I'm allowed to have benefit from, but others not, because he knows that already from Nevela, that I can't have benefit. It's only by Nevela that it's lenient. So it's the interesting thing that I'm not allowed to shech the korban outside the Beis Hamikdash. But what about something that's not kodesh in the Beis Hamikdash? Then I'm also not allowed to do it. Now, what happens if I did? So it's asur ba'ana. Reb Meir says that I don't throw it to a dog. Why would I think that I would throw this to the dog? Rashi tells us that when you're shechting an animal and there's a fetus inside and it sticks out a limb, an arm, a leg, so there becomes a problem with that limb. It's called chutz what is it called? Chutz l'mechitza. So, yeah, it's the ben pekua is inside. If it's outside, there's no problem. But the problem with this is that it never has any. I can't shech the shechita on the baby, on the fetus is not going to help it because the animal doesn't require shechita. The shechita on the mother doesn't help because it's sticking out. So this is called also. It's a basada or treifa. So we learned from that pasuk that this has no permissibility. Oh, so this is something that's chutz l'mechitza. So also a non-sacrifice animal that's shechted in an area that should not have been shechted, which is in the azara, is chutz l'mechitza. Its location is outside. It came inside. So I could have thought that maybe I should give this one also to the dog. It says no. You only give the a regular treifa to the dog, not this.
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last thing? So technically in the holy place. No. But it's the puts from the holy place. The same.
No. It's a mundane animal that's in the holy place, which means that it's outside its mundane area. It's chutz l'mechitza. It's not where it belongs. It belongs outside the azara. You shechted it in the azara. So that's similar to the case that I learned, basar basada treifa, where I have a fetus that has its limb, that's chutz l'mechitza also, where I learned from that pasuk that I have to throw it to the dogs. You say, oh, you only that you throw to the dogs, but not this non-carbon that's in the azara, that you don't throw to the dogs. So Reb Meir uses Isai to teach me that nuance there. The idach, what does Rabbi Yehuda do? Chulin, where does he know that you don't throw chulin shenishchudu b'azar to the dog? Chum shenishchudu b'azar lav deraisa. He says the fact that it's asur ba'ana is not a deraisa anyway. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that. You can do anything you want with it mid deraisa. Okay, Maser Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha has a question. Regarding the Gid HaNasha, it says that the Jewish people should not eat the Gid HaNasha. Utanan, and it was taught in the Mishnah, there's a little bit of an issue of giving a gift to a non-Jew because a Jewish person may see you giving it and they may end up saying that, oh, I can go eat it because I saw it came from this rabbi, it came from this Jewish fellow, and therefore it's kosher. Now, therefore, you shouldn't be giving a Gid HaNasha to a non-Jew or a thigh that has the Gid HaNasha still in it. But the Gemara says that it's not a problem because if the Gid Anasha wasn't removed, you can see that it wasn't removed. So it's not like someone's going to make a mistake and say, oh, it came from such and such a kosher family that's therefore it's going to be kosher. No, you can look at it. You see it's not. Yeah, in those days, I guess they knew.
Rabbi, the master, on occasion, it's kind of on the function one, like someone, I ended up giving that to non-Jewish person. So that's allowed, yes, or is that And I'm open about it,
Right,
because I can't wait to look around and do it.
right,
Usually give a good,
right, right. I don't know. I have to look it up. I'm not sure. So, what are we saying over here? We have a question. Our question is that a Gid Anosher is mutter ba'ana. We just gave a Gid Anosher to a non-Jew. According to Rabbi Vo says that anywhere where it says you shall not eat, that also means you shall not have benefit. How are you able to give a Gid Anosher to a guy? Granted, it's not going to end up in a Jew's hands because he can see it. Fine. But the whole concept of giving something that's not kosher to a non-Jew is prohibited according to Rabbi Vo. The answer to this is Rabbi Vo holds when we said that you're allowed to eat a non-kosher animal, you're allowed to not allowed to eat. You're allowed to have benefit from a non-kosher animal, from an animal that died without shechita. You're allowed to give it or sell it to a ger toshav or to a non-Jew. That permissibility includes chelba v'gida hutra. The chelba v'gida hutra. It itself, the chaylev of this animal, chaylev, the forbidden fats, and the gid that's inside. You're allowed to give it, and the guy is allowed to eat. You're allowed to give him it so he can have enjoyment from the gid as well. That means that the gid becomes mutter ba'ana together with the exception of nevela. Included in that exception is the forbidden fats and the gid. This is becoming easier on us. This concept that everything that's forbidden to eat is also forbidden to have benefit from, because you just included any animal, any non-kosher meat would be allowed to be given to. Granted that it's going to become permissible because you're allowed to give him the nevela, so therefore the gid is also permissible, but that's only if the prohibition of the gid anasha gives off a flavor. There is an opinion that holds that the gid itself doesn't give off any flavor. And according to that, what's going to come out is that it's just considered like a piece of wood. So when we said that you're allowed to, when you give him the nevela, he's allowed to eat the whole thing, but there's really no problem of the gid in that nevela, because what's he going to do if he eats the gid? How do you learn this? That even though it's not food, but it's still prohibited. So therefore, the exemption of nevela doesn't apply to the gid, because the gid isn't food. If I say the gid is food and it gives off a taste, and we say that you're allowed to give him the nevela, then included in that nevela would also be the gid. That means that there's permissible to have benefit from the gid. But if the gid doesn't have any taste and it's just the gzeres hakasav, then you're not allowed to eat it, even though it doesn't give off flavor. So then, how do you know that you're allowed to that you're allowed to give him the gid? Just the fact that the nevela became permissible to give him doesn't mean the gid, because it's not a food item. So the Gemara says, "Man shamalei damarin the gid nice and tam." Reb Shimon, that opinion that holds that the gid is not considered a food item, doesn't give off flavor. That's only Reb Shimon's opinion. The Tanya ha'echel megid anasha shel behema tmeya, Reb Yehuda mechayev shtayim. If someone eats the gid anasha from a non-kosher animal, Reb Yehuda says that you violated two prohibitions: non-kosher animal, and you ate a gid anasha. Reb Shimon says you violated nothing, not a gid anasha, and not the non-kosher animal. In the Giddim b'nice in town, there was no flavor to this. And when did the Torah say that you can't eat the gid? That's only if the flesh was permissible. The gid you don't eat, but the flesh you can eat. But if there's a tamaya, a non-kosher animal, Reb Shimon holds that the gid anasha was never prohibited on a non-kosher animal. So therefore, Reb Shimon hachinami the asur ba'ana. According to Reb Shimon, you're right. The gid anasha is asur ba'ana. The Tanya, we're starting in the Bryce. Gid anasha mutar ba'ana. The Reb Shimon Reb Shimon says it's asur ba'ana. So in other words, if I hold that the gid has a flavor to it, and it gives off flavor in the rest of the meat. If you cook it with other meat, it's going to make the other meat usher and all of that. Then I'm going to hold that you're allowed to have benefit from a gid, because the fact that I can give a gid to a guy, I give a whole animal to a guy, that means I can have benefit from the whole animal. Included in that is the food, is all the food that's in it, which is the fat and the gid and all of that. But if I hold that a gid is not considered food, so therefore the fact that I was allowed to give an avail to a guy doesn't include the prohibition of the gid. And so therefore that opinion would hold that the gid is actually asur ba'ana. I can't have other benefits from the gid anasha. Let's leave it over here.
Yeah.